Hi everyone, it's Louisa from LP Tutoring, and today we're talking about email etiquette for teens. How to email your teachers, what to email them, and most importantly, why you need to do it. So let's start just by talking about communication. Email is just another form of communication. We communicate with each other in so many ways: letters, tweets, texts, face-to-face conversations. But in the workplace, adults mostly use email. That is their main form of communication. And teachers are adults at work, and so that's how they communicate most of the time with parents, administrators, and students. And they expect students to be able to email them as well. The reason that teens need to learn this is, one, so they can participate in this form of communication, but also having to do with your own progress. If you're struggling in school, your teacher or professor is the first person you should talk to. And email is usually the fastest way and the easiest way to get a hold of them outside of class. So that's why teens really do need to learn how to email appropriately. So let's start at the beginning and talk about the first impression, and that is your email address. Now, when you were younger, you were told to create an email address that would protect your identity. So something like superstar 1500 at whatever. But as you get older, that's not appropriate anymore, and you need to have an email address that's more professional. And that means it's going to include part of your real name, either first or last name. It's your choice. It may depend on how distinctive one of those two names is, but part of one of them needs to be in your email address. You don't have to get rid of superstar 1500. You can still use it for social media, for emailing with your family or friends. I probably have 2 or 3 personal email addresses that I use for different purposes. So feel free to keep using it. You're just going to add another email address to use for communication with teachers or employers. So let me give you an example, a good example. So it says dhampton@gmail.com. This is great because it includes the first initial and the person's last name. As a teacher, when I see who the email's from and I see that address, I'm like, oh, that's right. Okay, that's Diane Hampton in my 3rd period class. So I know who the email is from automatically. One I don't recommend, dramaqueen@gmail.com. So true story, a friend of mine was in a coffee shop, and the managers of the coffee shop were sitting near her, and they were going through applications. And on one of them, the applicant listed her email address as drama queen whatever. They commented on that out loud and then promptly threw away her application. They said, well, if she's a drama queen, we don't want any part of that. So let that be another really powerful reason why you need a more professional email address, not only for teachers, but for employers as well. So what should you email about? My recommendations are, if it's something that can be easily answered in 1 to 2 sentences, go for it. If you're turning in an assignment via email and that is how your teacher or professor wants it turned in, again, go for it. Ones you probably want to think twice about. If you're asking for an extension, especially on a long-term assignment, I don't recommend emailing. You really need to talk to your teacher in person for that request. If your question you think is going to have a really long, complicated answer, again, just go in and talk to them in person. If you're turning an assignment via email without permission, you are supposed to turn it in a different way. Please don't turn it in via email if you weren't supposed to do it. Teachers and professors set up certain systems for receiving assignments, whether that is electronic or on paper. And it's very difficult for us when a student goes outside of those parameters. It's hard to keep track of, and it makes our lives that much harder. Now, if you still need to turn it in, just email and ask for permission. And they may say, yeah, sure, just email it to me, and then you can send it, not a problem. But again, if you don't have permission, ask before you actually send it. So when you write the email, you need to keep a couple of things in mind. It needs to be brief, no more than 1 paragraph long. Ain't nobody got time for a novel-length email. It needs to be super polite. You are making a request and asking a favor often, or at least asking of their time. So you need to be super polite in it. And you want to use positive language. So my example would be use if, not when. When I finish the assignment as opposed to if I finish the assignment. when I pass the class as opposed to if I pass the class. You're more likely to get a positive response when you use positive language. This is a formal letter that you are writing, so you need to use standard spellings. This is not a text, people. And that means you also need to edit for spelling and grammar before hitting the send button. Very, very important. So let's talk about what this email should look like. So I've written up a little email here. It says to lporter@school.edu. Clearly a made-up address. Please don't try to email that. The subject line, U.S. History - President's Project question. Dear Miss Porter, I have one quick question about the President's Project you assigned last week. Is the draft required or optional? I reread the project description but couldn't find the answer. Would you please let me know? Thank you, Josh Jenkins, 4th period, U.S. History. So let's talk about all the awesome parts of this email. All right, the first awesome part is the subject line. So the student has included the subject, it's the class name, U.S. History, and also the topic of the email in the subject line. Teachers and professors get lots and lots and lots of emails, and it's honestly hard to keep track of all of them. So if you're very specific in the subject line, it's easier for them to find in their email, and you are more likely to get a faster response. Next thing you need to include is a greeting. Dear Miss Porter. Always use dear. It's the easiest way to go. Use dear. Then for this part, you want to use whatever their chosen title is, whether that's Mr., Ms., Doctor, Professor. Whatever they go by in class with students is what you need to use here. And then always use their last name. You're not buddies. Don't use their first name, please. Also, please make sure that you're spelling the person's name correctly. I received many emails where my name was misspelled. My name is spelled in my email address. And that is true for almost all email addresses. So please just double check the spelling. All right, so the bulk of this little email is only 4 sentences, and 2 of those are questions, right? So the student has quickly summarized the problem, asked the direct question, is the draft required or optional? That question could, in theory, be answered in a single word, required or optional. Reality is they're going to answer with a couple of sentences, but it's very easy for a teacher to respond to this. The third sentence is the awesome one. It says, I reread the project description but couldn't find the answer. This student has been proactive. He tried to find the answer already and is only coming to me because he couldn't, as opposed to the student who never bothered to look at anything I gave him and asked me questions that I've already answered. Teachers are going to be much more positive about this. And then one last polite request, would you please let me know? Again, you're trying to be polite, you're asking for their time, and they're more likely to respond to a really polite question like that. So the next thing we want to talk about is the closing. Just as you had to have a greeting up here, you need to have a closing at the end. You can use a variety of different terms. Thank you, sincerely, regards, warmest regards. Those are all acceptable closings. And then the last thing is you want to include your full name and the class period, the specific class period that you're in. So why the full name? There have been years where I have had amongst my various classes 4 or 5 Alexes, Jakes, Chris's, Madisons. You need to be specific for the teacher. They're more likely to get back to you. They don't have to search or try to figure out which Jake they're talking to. So just always include your last name. And then again, be specific about which class you're in. I have had times where I've had students with identical names, first and last. So just try to make it as easy as possible for your teacher by providing that information. Sometimes you're going to want to email a complaint. Oh, be so careful about this. If you are going to do it, don't just write about how horrible the teacher is and how he's done you wrong. Please offer some realistic solutions. You're more likely to get a positive response from your teacher. So you do want to summarize the problem, but really like a sentence to max of summarizing what the problem is. Describe any steps you've already taken. So you went back to relook at the study guide to double check, or you talked to 2 other students trying to figure out this issue. And then you want to offer some suggestions. Again, this shows that you're being proactive. Now, they may not take your suggestions. They may completely throw them out, but they may not. Your teacher may read them and say, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. It's not a bad idea. And then run with it. So it's always helpful to do it, and they may actually take you up on your idea. But please, please, please be careful when you are emailing a complaint. Tone can be really easily misread in an email. And that is why sarcasm needs to stay at home. It does not belong in an email to your professor, really, ever, but especially if you're complaining about something. If you are in the least bit worried that your email will be misunderstood, just go in and talk in person. It's really the best way to do it. So you sent your email, you hit the send button. What happens next? Your teacher's not going to email you back right away. I can pretty much guarantee it. Why? Because he or she is working. They're teaching other classes, they're grading, they're writing lessons, they're in a bajillion different meetings. So give them at least one business day to respond. You can always follow up with your teacher. Let's say you send your email Tuesday night and you see her Wednesday morning in class. Before or after class, just walk up to her and say, hey, Miss P, I sent you an email. Did you have a chance to look at it? That way, if they have, they'll tell you that and say, oh, yeah, and they may just answer the question right then and there. Or they may say, no, I haven't had a chance, but I will this afternoon. You going and talking to them encourages them to actually answer the email, and it's a higher chance that you'll get a response. And then you actually need to check your email. There have been multiple times where kids have emailed me, I've emailed them back, and then 2 or 3 days later, they come to me asking about it. And I said, well, I emailed you like 2 days ago. Oh, I guess I should check my email. Yeah, you should check your email. When you email a teacher, you need to actually monitor that email address to make sure that you're seeing their response. Now, if this seems a little daunting to you, I have created something that I think will help, and they are free email scripts. And I've written them for about 8 or 9 of the most common emails that you would send to a teacher or professor. All you have to do is copy and paste them into your email and then just personalize them. Change out names and change out, for example, the reason why you were sick or absent from class. It's a great way to get started, especially if you're still not comfortable emailing a teacher, you're just not sure what to say. They're totally free. On the blog post, all you have to do is click on, there's a button for it, and sign up, and you can get it right away. So I really hope that you do that. Again, they're totally free, and I think that they'll help get you started in this process. Here's my bibliography. Got to give credit where credit is due. I just want to thank you again for listening to this presentation, and I hope that it helps you. If you have any questions at all, feel free to contact me. You can see my website is lptutoring.com, and if you're struggling at all, or your child is struggling in social studies, English, organization, study skills, or test prep, I'm your girl, and I'm more than happy to help you out. So again, thank you so much. Have a great day.